Hey, it's Lisa Rothman, and I'm the founder of StopFamilyConflict.com. I am a huge proponent of speaking truth with care because I believe that it can repair any ruptures. And I got to experience this for myself recently with a rupture that occurred 37 years ago. So I do this workshop for teachers, professional development for teachers, and it's called Beyond Power Struggles, Questions That Connect. And I like to tell stories in all my workshops. And so I start the workshop talking about a power struggle that I got into with a teacher when I was 16 years old. So what happened was I was a junior in high school. It was right before finals. I had a difficult paper to write, and I couldn't do it. And the reason I couldn't do it was because my mother had just died of breast cancer. I'm an only child. My father was completely overwhelmed. We did not have a memorial service for my mother. Her body was cremated and nobody claimed her ashes. My father expected me to return to school without taking any time off. And because I didn't have any adults in my life who understood the importance of grieving, that is what I expected of myself also. So the day after my mother died was Memorial Day, so no school, but plenty of time to get cracking on that paper. So I sat down at the desk in my bedroom and I fed a piece of paper into my electric typewriter. Remember those, anyone? And I got to work. The logical brain that I prided myself on having was a jumble. It was deeply unsettling and disorienting. And so I went outside to where my father was digging in the garden, and I asked him to call the teacher and request that I be excused from the assignment and to let some other work that I had done earlier that was like extra credit stand in for the paper. My father, I want to be really clear, my father was very well intentioned here, and I think he truly believed he was contributing to me. My father said he was willing to call the teacher for me. He was very reluctant about it, though, because he felt that I didn't deserve special treatment. Those were the words that he used. And when he called the teacher agreed with him. And the teacher did say that he would give me an incomplete, and I could turn the paper in the first day of the next school year. I went up to my room and flopped down onto my futon and sobbed because I had never felt so alone in my life, and it was really hitting me what it meant that my mother was no longer around to advocate for me. I was so alone. And there was no way that I could, in the next 3 months, pull it together enough in my brain to handle the complexity of thinking that paper required. It wasn't that I would not write the paper. It was that I could not write that paper. And my father and the journalism teacher apparently didn't believe me. I just thought of the next 3 months with this thing that I could not do hanging over my head. And so I determined that I was not going to do it. I resigned myself to getting an F, to screwing up my GPA, ruining my chances of being valedictorian, and probably going to be accepted at a university that my mom would have wanted me to attend. That was the way this was going to go. And so in the workshop for teachers, I pause the story here, and then the workshop is so much about whether when a student doesn't meet a teacher's expectation, is it that the student won't do the assignment, or is it that they can't do the assignment? And how the needs that students are meeting are very different based on the answer to that question, and the possibilities that emerge when the assumption is made that it's actually that the student cannot do the assignment at that time. And of course, there are ways to handle it if it's also that the student won't do it. There are ways to navigate this without a power struggle as well. But so this is one of the themes that runs through this workshop. And I pick up the workshop at the end. I pick up the story at the end of the workshop, and I tell what happened, which was that I went to school on Tuesday, and the principal called me into her office, and she was curious and asked if there was anything she could do to be of help. And I thought long and hard before I responded, because I was scared about defying the teacher, and I was scared about defying my father, and I was also worried that she was about to confirm this emerging belief that I had, that I was someone who wasn't worthy of understanding. My own moral compass at this point was so spinning out of control. I was like, oh, there felt like there was nothing firm to stand on. But I said, I can take all my finals, but I cannot do this paper. And the principal immediately told the teacher to excuse the paper, and I was valedictorian. And it was a big relief to me to not do that paper. Yeah, really big. And that this was like a touchstone for me, for my own mental health and well-being, not only in that moment, but for years to come. That is not an exaggeration. So I end the workshop there. Okay. A while ago, it was a Sunday morning, and I got a text from someone who I hadn't heard from in 7 years. And what she wanted me to know was that our high school English teacher had died, and that a memorial service was happening for her in 3 hours. And everything in me said, I must go to this memorial service. It was so clear to me. And yes, of course, this teacher was extremely important to me and is one of the reasons that I am a strong writer today. But it felt like there was something else, some other reason calling me to go to this service. So I canceled an appointment that I had with a client, and I went to the memorial service. And guess who was the first speaker? The teacher who had not wanted to excuse my assignment. And I thought, what do I do? And I actually put out into the universe, wow, what do I do in this situation? And the answer that came was in the form of a conversation I had with someone else who was there, who, when I told her what I do, preventing and repairing conflict, she said, thank you so much for helping people not avoid difficult conversations. And I thought, yep, that is what I do. And I guess that is the message that I needed about what to do, but what to do. Okay, I know what I'm being called to do, but actually how? I had the what, now the how. How was I going to navigate this? We are at this funeral. This man is in his 80s. He's grieving his friend and colleague. And this message came through to me to ask about his daughter, who was in the same class that I was in. And so after the remarks were made, we were eating, and someone was sitting next to him, and she got up and she left, and I sat myself down next to him, and I said, hello, Lisa Rothman. You probably don't remember me, class of 89. And it was clear he didn't remember me, but he said, oh, you were in my daughter's class. And I said, yes, I was. How is she doing? And to preserve their privacy, I'm not going to go into great detail, but what I will say is that something had happened that had resulted in one of his grandchildren going through a very, very difficult time that required her to get lots of extra support in high school and beyond, but that she had made it through, and she'd actually graduated from college. But as this teacher of mine said, wow, she needed a hell of a lot of support. And I expressed to him how glad I was that she had been able to get that support that she needed. And then he asked me what I do, and I explained to him what I do. And I said, I do have this one of the workshops I offer is for teachers. And he said, well, how did you come to do this? And I shared the story of my mother and the breast cancer. And if some of you aren't familiar, one of the reasons I'm so committed to speaking truth with care is because my parents made a decision to withhold the reality of my mother's prognosis from me and many, many other people for 11 years, from the point that my mother got her breast cancer diagnosis to the point that she died when I was 16. They knew that the cancer was spreading through her body, and they didn't share it they hardly shared it with anybody. And that I'd vowed that I would learn from that and would be able to speak even the most difficult truths with care to my own children. And so that's one of the reasons that I've done what I do, and why I want to help other parents in being able to do that as well. So I shared with him this whole story, and I said, so there's a very difficult truth that I want to share with you, and it's my intention to do it with care for both of us. And I told him what happened when I was 16. So I got to the part in the story where he is agreeing with my father and is unwilling to excuse the paper. And he's looking at me with such abject horror. And he says, did I give you an F? And I told him that he didn't, but that he, gave me an incomplete. And he said, well, what happened? And I said, the next day I asked the principal and she overrode your decision. And he said, I am so relieved to hear that. I had no business being a teacher. I didn't know what I was doing. And I said, but we just heard all these speakers who not only thanked my English teacher, but had thanked him for launching them on their careers, some of whom had won Pulitzer Prizes. There were actually 3 Pulitzer Prize winners in attendance at that memorial service who were crediting my teacher and this teacher with my English teacher and this teacher with setting them on their path. And he said yes. He said, but I made so many mistakes, and I think about them every day, and it was because of a situation from my own childhood in which his father had hit his mother, and he was blamed as a little boy for that situation. He said he didn't know what he was doing. And he said he thinks about all the mistakes that he's made, and he's filled with regret about them. And he didn't even know about this mistake that he'd made with me. He didn't even know about it. And I said to him, the way that you have listened to this story and have heard me and acknowledged what happened with so little defense, with no defensiveness, has been so healing for me. And I am so glad that your granddaughter is doing better now, and that you learned so much about how important it is for people to get extra help when they need extra help, and that you understand that now. I said, you are this I don't say what your name is, but I do talk about this story in that workshop that I do for teachers that I mentioned. I said, and now you've given me such a gift, not only of this reconciliation with you, but also I get to add this to the workshop, and I'm sure that it's going to inspire many, many teachers. So, yeah, speak truth with care to move from rupture to repair, even when the ruptures happened 37 years ago. May you have an opportunity to heal all the ruptures that have happened in your life. Bye for now. Me again. If you enjoyed this video and would like to find out more about how to apply what I just discussed in your own family, you might want to get a free conflict prevention jumpstart kit. The details are in the description of this video. It includes strategies for turning every conflict into an opportunity for more trust and connection without giving up on anything that's important to you.